Hello all, welcome back. It's time for the reading for September, which holds our period of transition from transition from summer to fall for those of us in the northern hemisphere. And then for those in the southern hemisphere, we're going to be hitting the opposite of that, which is going to be heading into their summer, or I should say, heading into their going into their spring to summer. So we also have a number of retrogrades that are going on right at the moment, as well as we're heading towards eclipses that will be taking place. So there's a lot of transitional energy going on that needs to be shifted and moved around, and is also calling for contemplation in this next month. So let's go ahead and get the dice. Let's go ahead and get the bones in here and see what they've got to say. All right, so we have thrown the bones, and they've stayed much more in a clustered heap this time. Our dice this time ended up on the ninth house, so this is going to relate to travel, study, higher learning, morals, and ethics. Now, what we got for the Adinkra is the King's Gun, which represents defense, power, protection, and greatness. The gun is either the thing that starts the celebration or it's the thing that starts the war. And so we want to keep in mind that also relates to what we're saying with the ninth house. So how are we traveling to celebrate? How are we traveling for greatness? And how are we using our travels to learn about how to defend ourselves? How are we using travel to understand our power? And the same thing goes for what we are studying and what we consider higher learning. And again, the highest possible learning that exists is actually not at the university, but in nature itself. And how moral and ethics apply to things. Because again, this gun, as it says, can either start the celebration or it starts the war. So are we using our morals and ethics to start celebrations, or are we using them to start wars? So this month is going to be very much about that contemplation of what are we doing and why we are doing these things. And just a reminder that until the gun became an element in the modern world, it would have been a swordsman that would have been the king's either starter of celebrations or starter of wars. So just because times have changed doesn't mean that aspect doesn't also still apply. Or are you starting a celebration, or are you starting a war? Or I think we probably should think about that more as, are we starting a war or are we starting a celebration? So when we look at the bones as they fall in today, you can see, like I said, they're clustered. So this one is work, this one is home. That one is our social bone. And the work and home bone are next to each other. So this is going to be a time in this next month about where did our home life and our work life again overlap? How do they both work together, and then do they diverge? And are we defending one more than the other? Are we finding power in one more than the other? Is one providing us protection and greatness, or is not? And again, how are we using that aspect of why and what our home does for us to travel versus being able to be satisfied with being home and using that time as our home also a place to study. Same thing with our work. And as you notice, we've got clusterings of the support bones and the spinal bones next to each one of those. So you can take either path and it will still be useful. It still be necessary. Now over here, the social bone, which is also right now between our quartz piece, which is again memory, thought, looking at the reflections of the past. So our work and also what we're doing socially are something that we need to reflect on the past and the choices that we're making there. How are we working with them to bring about more positive change? How are we operating with the aspect of giving them the reflection of where we have been and where we want to go? For that defense, that power, that protection, that greatness. For that travel, that study, that higher learning, that moral and ethics. We've also got inspiration coming in here too with the rib bone, because we want to be able to breathe, and you want to make sure that what you're doing here socially is allowing you to breathe. Same thing here with the tailbone. This one here that almost looks, it's like, how is that also propelling you? And we want to be propelling, again, from a place that is moral and ethical, that chooses not to start wars unless it really has to, but instead chooses to create celebrations. And we have spirit here again with a rib bone, and it's actually, nope, it's not the broken one. The broken one's over here, next to work. So work's also got the aspect of how are we supporting the future by knowing the past? How are we supporting the elderly and those that are infirmed in our work? And let it be informed too. But back down to here, so we've almost got almost like a lever that's being pushed on by this very small balancing bone onto the rib bone for spirit, and that conductivity. So there's conductivity that's going to be coming through here into what we're doing socially. And again, what are we setting up with spirit? What is the energy we're asking spirit to continue to funnel in? Are we continually asking it to funnel in energy for war, or are we suddenly putting in energy for celebration? Because let's be frank, even spirit likes to party, and spirit would like to party more often than necessarily going to war. Someone recently said to me that they were having a ritual in which they didn't want to bring in the songs for death, and yet if they wanted to marshal the spirits for war and fighting, with so many things at stake in this near coming future, you're not inviting in death, because death's going to be in this too. Something has to end. So how we are using our tools to move us is important. Are you moving towards war, or are you moving towards celebration? Have you used your knowledge so that you move towards celebration versus war? Have you used all that you're studying to do that? So over here, we've got a couple of other floaters. So this is another of our balancing points is going to be coming in. This is probably going to be coming in much more in October. This one is November. There's something that's going to be ending in November. It's also a balancing point, so that we need to be conscious of that. This is a place where we're going to need structure on support in the month of October. And here too. Which brings us also to our shell, which is turned inward. So this is, again, a lot of period of where we're looking at that moral and ethics. And that's going to be much more of an internal situation than it is external. External will influence, but ultimately it is an internal process. And that's where our learning is informative. Is our learning moving us and developing towards, again, war or celebration? Because you still always have a choice. Good choice and good choice, good choice and bad choice and bad choice. You still get a choice. So, this is what the ancestors have to offer for us right now, and the Orishas and Loas. So I wish you well as you celebrate this Labor Day and as you go into this seasonal change with the equinox. And the question is, are you choosing war or are you choosing celebration? Either way, it's a time to think. Ashe.